Repent, Harlequin, said the Ticktockman. There are always those who ask, what's it all about? For those who need to ask, for those who need points sharply made, who need to know where it's at, this. The mass of men serve the state thus, not as men mainly, but as machines with their bodies. They are the standing army and the militia, jailers, constables, posse comitatus, etc. In most cases, there is no free exercise whatever of the judgment or of the moral sense, but they put themselves on a level with wood and earth and stones, and wooden men can perhaps be manufactured that will serve the purpose as well. Such command no more respect than men of straw or a lump of dirt. They have the same sort of worth only as horses and dogs. Yet such as these, even, are commonly esteemed good citizens. Others, as most legislators, politicians, lawyers, ministers, and office holders, serve the state chiefly with their heads, and as they rarely make any moral distinctions, they are as likely to serve the devil without intending it as God. A very few, as heroes, patriots, martyrs, reformers in the great sense, and men, serve the state with their consciences also, and so necessarily resist it for the most part. And they are commonly treated as enemies by it. Henry David Thoreau, Civil Disobedience. Now that's the heart of it. Now begin in the middle, and later learn the beginning. The end will take care of itself. But because it was the very world it was, the very world they had allowed it to become, for months his activities didn't come to the alarmed attention of the ones who kept the machine functioning smoothly, the ones who poured the very best butter over the cams and mainsprings of the culture. Not until it had become obvious that somehow, some way, he had become a notoriety, a celebrity, perhaps even a hero for what officialdom inescapably tagged an emotionally disturbed segment of the populace, did they turn it over to the Ticktockman and his legal machinery. But by then, because it was the very world it was, and they had no way to predict he would happen, possibly a strain of disease long defunct, now suddenly reborn in a system where immunity had been forgotten, had lapsed, he had been allowed to become too real. Now he had form and substance. He had become a personality, something they'd filtered out of the system many decades before. But there it was, and there he was, a very definitely imposing personality. In certain circles, middle-class circles, it was thought disgusting, vulgar ostentation, anarchistic, shameful. In others, there was only sniggering, those strata where thought is subjugated to form and ritual, niceties, proprieties. But down below, down below, where the people always needed their saints and sinners, their bread and circuses, their heroes and villains, he was considered a Bolivar, a Napoleon, a Robin Hood, a Dick Bong, ace of aces, a Jesus, a Jomo Kenyatta. And at the top, where, like socially attuned shipwreck Kellys, every tremor and vibration threatens to dislodge the wealthy, powerful, and titled from their flagpoles, he was considered a menace, a heretic, a rebel, a disgrace, a peril. He was known down the line to the very heart-meat core, but the important reactions were high above and far below, at the very top, at the very bottom. So his file was turned over, along with his time card and his cardio plate, to the office of the Ticktockman. The Ticktockman, very much over 6 feet tall, often silent, a soft, purring man when things went time-wise. The Ticktockman. Even in the cubicles of the hierarchy, where fear was generated and seldom suffered, he was called the Ticktockman. But no one called him that to his mask. You don't call a man a hated name, not when that man behind his mask is capable of revoking the minutes, the hours, the days and nights, the years of your life. He was called the Master Timekeeper to his mask. It was safer that way. This is what he is, said the Ticktockman with genuine softness, but not who he is. This time card I'm holding in my left hand has a name on it, but it is the name of what he is, not who he is. The cardio plate here in my right hand is also named, but not whom named, merely what named. Before I can exercise proper revocation, I have to know who this what is. To his staff, all the ferrets, all the loggers, all the finks, all the comics, even the minis, he said, "Who is this Harlequin?" He was not purring smoothly. Time-wise, it was jangle. However, it was the longest speech they had ever heard him utter at one time, the staff, the ferrets, the loggers, the finks, the comics, but not the minis, who usually weren't around to know in any case. But even they scurried to find out. Who is the Harlequin? High above the third level of the city, he crouched on the humming aluminum-frame platform of the airboat. Oof, airboat indeed. Swizzle skid is what it was, with a tow rack jerry-rigged. And he stared down at the neat Mondrian arrangement of the buildings. Somewhere nearby, he could hear the metronomic left, right, left of the 2:47 p.m. shift entering the Timken roller-bearing plant in their sneakers. A minute later, precisely, he heard the softer right, left, right of the 5 o'clock a.m. formation going home. An elfin grin spread across his tanned features, and his dimples appeared for a moment. And then, scratching at his thatch of auburn hair, he shrugged within his motley as though girding himself for what came next, and threw the joystick forward and bent into the wind as the airboat dropped. He skimmed over a slidewalk, purposely dropping a few feet to crease the tassels of the ladies of fashion, and, inserting thumbs in large ears, he stuck out his tongue, rolled his eyes, and went, "Wagga, wagga, wagga!" It was a minor diversion. One pedestrian skittered and tumbled, sending parcels every which way. Another wet herself. A third keeled slantwise, and the walk was stopped automatically by the servitors till she could be resuscitated. It was a minor diversion. Then he swirled away on a vagrant breeze and was gone. Hi-ho! As he rounded the cornice of the Time Motion Study Building, he saw the shift just boarding the slidewalk. With practiced motion and an absolute conservation of movement, they sidestepped up onto the slow strip and, in a chorus line reminiscent of a Busby Berkeley film of the antediluvian 1930s, advanced across the strips ostrich-walking till they were lined up on the express strip. Once more, in anticipation, the elfin grin spread, and there was a tooth missing back there on the left side. He dipped, skimmed, and swooped over them, and then, scrunching about on the airboat, he released the holding pins that fastened shut the ends of the homemade pouring troughs that kept his cargo from dumping prematurely. And as he pulled the trough pins, the airboat slid over the factory workers, and $150,000 worth of jelly beans cascaded down on the express strip. Jelly beans! Millions and billions of purples and yellows and greens and licorice and grape and raspberry and mint and round and smooth and crunchy outside and soft mealy inside and sugary and bouncing, jouncing, tumbling, clittering, clattering, skittering fell on the heads and shoulders and hard hats and carapaces of the Timken workers, tinkling on the slidewalk and bouncing away and rolling about underfoot and filling the sky on their way down with all the colors of joy and childhood and holidays coming down in a steady rain, a solid wash, a torrent of color and sweetness out of the sky from above, and entering a universe of sanity and metronomic order with quite mad cuckoo newness. Jelly beans! The shift workers howled and laughed and were pelted and broke ranks, and the jelly beans managed to work their way into the mechanism of the slidewalks, after which there was a hideous scraping as the sound of 1,000,000 fingernails rasped down 250,000 blackboards, followed by a coughing and a spluttering, and then the slidewalks all stopped, and everyone was dumped this away and that away in a jackstraw tumble, still laughing and popping little jelly bean eggs of childish color into their mouths. It was a holiday and a jollity, an absolute insanity, a giggle, but the shift was delayed 7 minutes. They did not get home for 7 minutes. The master's schedule was thrown off by 7 minutes. Quotas were delayed by inoperative slidewalks for 7 minutes. He had tapped the first domino in the line, and one after another, like the others had fallen. The system had been 7 minutes' worth of disrupted. It was a tiny matter, one hardly worthy of note, but in a society where the single driving force was order and unity and equality and promptness and clock-like precision and attention to the clock, reverence of the gods of the passage of time, it was a disaster of major importance. So he was ordered to appear before the Ticktockman. It was broadcast across every channel of the communications web. He was ordered to be there at 7 o'clock, damn it, on time. And they waited, and they waited, but he didn't show up till almost 10:30, at which time he merely sang a little song about moonlight in a place no one had ever heard of called Vermont, and vanished again. But they had all been waiting since 7, and it wrecked hell with their schedules. So the question remained, who is the Harlequin? But the unasked question, more important of the two, was, how did we get into this position where a laughing, irresponsible japer of Jabberwocky and jive could disrupt our entire economic and cultural life with $150,000 worth of jelly beans? Jelly, for God's sake, beans! This is madness. Where did he get the money to buy $150,000 worth of jelly beans? They knew it would have cost that much because they had a team of situation analysts pulled off another assignment and rushed to the slidewalk scene to sweep up and count the candies and produce findings which disrupted their schedules and threw their entire branch at least a day behind. Jelly beans. Jelly beans? Now, wait a second. A second accounted for. No one has manufactured jelly beans for over 100 years. Where did he get jelly beans? That's another good question. And more than likely, it'll never be answered to your complete satisfaction. But then, how many questions ever are? The middle you know. Here is the beginning. How it starts. A desk pad. Day for day and turn each day. 9 o'clock, open the mail. 9:45, appointment with Planning Commission Board. 10:30, discuss installation progress charts with JL. 11:45, pray for rain. 12 o'clock, lunch. And so it goes. I'm sorry, Miss Grant, but the time for interviews was set at 2:30, and it's almost 5 now. I'm sorry you're late, but those are the rules. You'll have to wait till next year to submit application for this college again. And so it goes. The 10:10 local stops at Crest Haven, Galesville, Tonawanda Junction, Selby, and Farnhurst, but not at Indiana City, Lucasville, and Colton except on Sunday. The 10:35 express stops at Galesville, Selby, and Indiana City except on Sundays and holidays, at which time it stops at... And so it goes. I couldn't wait, Fred. I had to be at Pierre Cartain's by 3 o'clock, and you said you'd meet me under the clock in the terminal at 2:45, and you weren't there, so I had to go on. You're always late, Fred. If you'd been there, we could have sewed it up together, but as it was, well, I took the order alone. And so it goes. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Atterley, in reference to your son Gerald's constant tardiness, I am afraid we will have to suspend him from school unless some more reliable method can be instituted guaranteeing he will arrive at his classes on time. Granted, he is an exemplary student and his marks are high. His constant flouting of the schedules of the school makes it impractical to maintain him in a system where the other children seem capable of getting where they are supposed to be on time. And so it goes. You cannot vote unless you appear at 8:45 a.m. I don't care if the script is good. I need it Thursday. Checkout time is 2 p.m. You got here late. The job's taken. Sorry. Your salary has been docked for 20 minutes time lost. God, what time is it? I've got to run. And so it goes, and so it goes, and so it goes, and so it goes, tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. And one day, we no longer let time serve us. We serve time, and we are slaves of the schedule, worshippers of the sun's passing, bound into a life predicated on restrictions because the system will not function if we don't keep the schedule tight. Until it becomes more than a minor inconvenience to be late. It becomes a sin, and then a crime punishable by this. Effective 15 July 2389, 12 o'clock 0000 midnight, the Office of the Master Timekeeper will require all citizens to submit their time cards and cardioplates for processing. In accordance with Statute 555-7-SGH-999, governing the revocation of time per capita, all cardioplates will be keyed to the individual holder, and what they had done was to devise a method of curtailing the amount of life a person could have. If he was 10 minutes late, he lost 10 minutes of his life. An hour was proportionately worth more revocation. If someone was consistently tardy, he might find himself on a Sunday night receiving a communique from the master timekeeper that his time had run out, and he would be turned off. At high noon on Monday, please straighten your affairs, sir, madam, or bisex. And so, by this simple scientific expedient, utilizing a scientific process held dearly secret by the Ticktockman's office, the system was maintained. It was the only expedient thing to do. It was, after all, patriotic. The schedules had to be met. After all, there was a war on. But wasn't there always? Now that is really disgusting, the Harlequin said when Pretty Alice showed him the wanted poster. Disgusting and highly improbable. After all, this isn't the Day of the Desperado. A wanted poster? You know, Pretty Alice noted, you speak with a great deal of inflection. I'm sorry, said the Harlequin humbly. Oh, no need to be sorry. You're always saying, I'm sorry. You have such massive guilt, Everett. It's really very sad. I'm sorry, he repeated, and then pursed his lips so the dimples appeared momentarily. He hadn't wanted to say that at all. I have to go out again. I have to do something. Pretty Alice slammed her coffee bulb down on the counter. Oh, for God's sake, Everett. Can't you stay home just one night? Must you always be out in that ghastly clown suit running around annoying people? He stopped and clapped the jester's hat onto his auburn thatch with a tiny tingling of bells. He rose, rinsed out his coffee bulb with the spray, and put it into the dryer for a moment. I have to go. She didn't answer. The fax box was purring, and she pulled a sheet out, read it, threw it toward him on the counter. It's about you, of course. You're ridiculous. He read it quickly. It said the Ticktockman was trying to locate him. He didn't care. He was going out to be late again. At the door, dredging for an exit line, he hurled back petulantly, Well, you speak with inflection, too. Pretty Alice rolled her pretty eyes heavenward. You're ridiculous. The Harlequin stalked out, slamming the door, which sighed shut softly and locked itself. There was a gentle knock, and Pretty Alice got up with an exhalation of exasperated breath and opened the door. He stood there. I'll be back about 10:30, okay? She pulled a rueful face. Why do you tell me that? Why? You know you'll be late. You know it! You're always late. So why do you tell me these dumb things? She closed the door. On the other side, the Harlequin nodded to himself. She's right. She's always right. I'll be late. I'm always late. Why do I tell her these dumb things? He shrugged again and went off to be late once more. He had fired off the firecracker rockets that said, I will attend the 115th Annual International Medical Association invocation at 8 o'clock p.m. precisely. I do hope you will all be able to join me. The words had burned in the sky, and of course the authorities were there, lying in wait for him. They assumed, naturally, that he would be late. He arrived 20 minutes early, while they were setting up the spiderwebs to trap and hold him. Blowing a large bullhorn, he frightened and unnerved them so, their own moisturized encirclement webs sucked closed, and they were hauled up, kicking and shrieking, high above the amphitheater's floor. The Harlequin laughed and apologized profusely. The physicians, gathered in solemn conclave, roared with laughter, and accepted the Harlequin's apologies with exaggerated bowing and posturing, and a merry time was had by all who thought the Harlequin was a regular fou-for-all in fancy pants. All that is... But the authorities, who had been sent out by the office of the Ticktockman, they hung there like so much dockside cargo hauled up above the floor of the amphitheater in a most unseemly fashion. In another part of the same city where the Harlequin carried on his activities, totally unrelated in every way to what concerns us here, save that it illustrates the Ticktockman's power and import, a man named Marshall Delahanty received his turn-off notice from the Ticktockman's office. His wife received the notification from the gray-suited Minnie who delivered it, with the traditional look of sorrow plastered hideously across his face. She knew what it was, even without unsealing it. It was a billet-doux of immediate recognition to everyone these days. She gasped and held it as though it were a glass slide tinged with botulism, and prayed it was not for her. Let it be for Marsh, she thought brutally, realistically, or one of the kids, but not for me. Please, dear God, not for me. And then she opened it, and it was for Marsh, and she was at one and the same time horrified and relieved. The next trooper in the line had caught the bullet. Marshall! She screamed. Marshall! Termination, Marshall! Oh my God, Marshall! What'll we do? What'll we do, Marshall? Oh my God, Marshall! And in their home that night was the sound of tearing paper and fear, and the stink of madness went up the flue, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing they could do about it. But Marshall Delahanty tried to run. And early the next day, when turn-off time came, he was deep in the Canadian forest 200 miles away, and the office of the Ticktockman blanked his cardio plate, and Marshall Delahanty keeled over, running, and his heart stopped, and the blood dried up on its way to his brain, and he was dead, that's all. One light went out on the sector map in the office of the master timekeeper, while notification was entered for fax reproduction, and Georgette Delahanty's name was entered on the dole rolls till she could remarry, which is the end of the footnote, And all the point that need be made, except don't laugh. Because that is what would have happened to the Harlequin if ever the Ticktockman found out his real name. It isn't funny. The shopping level of the city was thronged with the Thursday colors of the buyers. Women in canary yellow chitons and men in pseudo-Tyrolean outfits that were jade and leather and fit very tightly, save for the balloon pants. When the Harlequin appeared on the still-being-constructed shell of the new Efficiency Shopping Center, his bullhorn to his elfishly laughing lips, everyone pointed and stared, and he berated them.
Why let them order you about? Why let them tell you to hurry and scurry like ants or maggots? Take your time. Saunter a while. Enjoy the sunshine, enjoy the breeze. Let life carry you at your own pace. Don't be slaves of time. It's a hell of a way to die, slowly, by degrees. Down with the Ticktockman!
Who's the nut? Most of the shoppers wanted to know. Who's the nut? Oh, wow, I'm going to be late. I got to run. And the construction gang on the shopping center received an urgent order from the office of the master timekeeper that the dangerous criminal known as the Harlequin was atop their spire, and their aid was urgently needed in apprehending him. The work crew said no, they would lose time on their construction schedule, but the Ticktockman managed to pull the proper threads of governmental webbing, and they were told to cease work and catch that nitwit up there on the spire, up there with the bullhorn. So a dozen and more burly workers began climbing into their construction platforms, releasing the A-graph plates and rising toward the Harlequin. After the debacle, in which, through the Harlequin's attention to personal safety, no one was seriously injured, the workers tried to reassemble and assault him again. But it was too late. He had vanished. It had attracted quite a crowd, however, and the shopping cycle was thrown off by hours, simply hours. The purchasing needs of the system were therefore falling behind, and so measures were taken to accelerate the cycle for the rest of the day, but it got bogged down and speeded up, and they sold too many float valves and not nearly enough wigglers, which meant that the Popley rate was off, which made it necessary to rush cases and cases of spoiling smash-o to stores that usually needed a case only every 3 to 4 hours, and the shipments were bollocks, the transshipments were misrouted, and in the end, even the swizzle skid industries felt it. "Don't come back till you have him," the Ticktockman said very quietly, very sincerely, extremely dangerously. They used dogs. They used probes. They used cardioplate cross-offs. They used teepers. They used bribery. They used stick-tights. They used intimidation. They used torment. They used torture. They used finks. They used cops. They used search and seizure. They used Faleron. They used betterment incentive. They used fingerprints. They used the Bertillon system. They used cunning. They used guile. They used treachery. They used Raoul Mitgong, but he didn't help much. They used applied physics. They used techniques of criminology. And what the hell, they caught him. And after all, his name was Everett C. Marm, and he wasn't much to begin with, except a man who had no sense of time. "Repent, Harlequin," said the Ticktockman. "Get stuffed," the Harlequin replied, sneering. "You've been late a total of 63 years, 5 months, 3 weeks, 2 days, 12 hours, 41 minutes, 59 seconds, 0.036111 microseconds. You've used up everything you can and more. I'm going to turn you off." "Scare someone else. I'd rather be dead than live in a dumb world with a boogeyman like you." "It's my job." "You're full of it. You're a tyrant. You have no right to order people around and kill them if they show up late." "You can't adjust. You can't fit in. Unstrap me and I'll fit my fist into your mouth." "You're a nonconformist." "That didn't used to be a felony." "It is now. Live in the world around you." "I hate it. It's a terrible world." "Not everyone thinks so. Most people enjoy order." "I don't, and most of the people I know don't." "That's not true. How do you think we caught you?" "I'm not interested." "A girl named Pretty Alice told us who you were." "That's a lie." "It's true. You unnerve her. She wants to belong. She wants to conform. I'm going to turn you off." "Then do it already and stop arguing with me." "I'm not going to turn you off." "You're an idiot." "Repent, Harlequin," said the Ticktockman. "Get stuffed." So they sent him to Coventry. And in Coventry, they worked him over. It was just like what they did to Winston Smith in 1984, which was a book none of them knew about, but the techniques are really quite ancient. And so they did it to Everett C. Marm. And one day, quite a long time later, the Harlequin appeared on the communications web, appearing elfin and dimpled and bright-eyed and not at all brainwashed. And he said he had been wrong, that it was a very good thing indeed, to belong, to be right on time, hip-ho, and away we go. And everyone stared up at him on the public screens that covered an entire city block. And they said to themselves, well, you see, he was just a nut after all. And if that's the way the system is run, well, then let's do it that way, because it doesn't pay to fight City Hall, or in this case, the Ticktockman. So Everett C. Marm was destroyed, which was a loss, because of what Thoreau said earlier. But you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, and in every revolution a few die who shouldn't. But they have to, because that's the way it happens. And if you make only a little change, then it seems to be worthwhile. Or, to make the point lucidly, excuse me, sir. I don't know how to tell you this, but you were 3 minutes late. The schedule is a little a bit off. He grinned sheepishly. That's ridiculous, murmured the Ticktockman behind his mask. Check your watch. And then he went into his office, going, "Mermy, mermy, mermy, mermy."